never ever talk about it again. That's the British way. We don't handle confrontation particularly well, which is strange when you consider our history.
Yes, and your large collection of antiquities. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Very Special Relationship, the podcast that takes a look across the Atlantic and asks, hey, everything okay over there? I'm Andrea Bridges-Smith of the Phoenix News Network, and with me is my excellent co-host, Matt Johnston from the Interesting Times. Matt, first up, everything okay over there?
Oh, yes, actually, we've had some rather lovely weather for the first time this year. And we're also,
Matt, it's been a really slow news week over here. Not much going on at all, really. So is there anything that you want to know about before we cover things on your side of the world?
Something about incarceration of a moron? Let me put it another way. Lock him up, and build that wall around him, so he can't get out. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yes, right. That. I'm surprised anybody else cares about that. It's such a small news story. Yes, everyone's least favorite president, apologies to Grover Cleveland, got indicted, arrested, booked, fingerprinted, arraigned, and released. All while about 10 other cases targeted at him also had major developments that don't bode well for him. Then he went home to make a speech and paint the walls with ketchup. But other than that, not much going on, really.
All right. So tell me, Andrea, what exactly is he being charged with?
That's a very good question. So the case is a little bit complex, but basically, Trump slept with a porn star right after his son's birth and another model around the same time. So he conspired with a tabloid and his lawyer to cover it all up while he was running for president. But instead of using his campaign funds to, say, buy ad space on Fox News, he wrote checks to his lawyer for legal fees, which should have been labeled as porn star hush money. Also, I learned this, you're not supposed to use campaign donations to hush up porn stars. I'm being told that that's actually not ethical at all, which is why I only use my campaign funds for cocaine.
Me too.
Smart man. So it was a circus over here, though. George Santos and Marjorie Taylor Greene showed up to, I guess, yell crazy stuff at people. But New York City gave them a very polite, no thank you. And by very polite, I mean they yelled the loudest. Do you guys like a loud protest over there, or do you prefer to keep things a little bit quieter? You guys are known for being a little bit more restrained than us.
Yeah, not a fan of yelling at all. In fact, if Twitter ever gets an audio button, I'm cancelling my account. Now, would you believe it, Andrea, in the week that the orange one was arrested in the US, the tartan one was likewise in Scotland. Oh. Nicola Sturgeon, who is the ex-First Minister of Scotland, she unexpectedly resigned 6 weeks ago, and she has had her property raided by the police looking into the Scottish National Party's fundraising and finances. She was the leader of the SNP, and her husband, who is CEO, has been arrested as a suspect. Not sure which porn star he paid off, though. Could be Glenda McTitties, or Muriel McMoist, or Bonnie McFanny, but that's unlikely, as she's more of a One Nation conservative.
You guys have a very interesting porn industry over there. So I think this is delightful. There's a transatlantic holding people to account going on, and it is about time. I'm glad that we are embarking on that journey together. But tell me this, what about Boris Johnson? I know you had some Partygate hearings recently. How did those end up? Have you managed to get Bojo in manacles yet?
Not quite. See, the too long-running saga of Boris Johnson having his past finally catch up with him looks to be here. And come on, past, it's taking you this long to catch up with this guy? I mean, look at him. This has all come about as Boris Johnson stood up in Parliament and lied his arse off, which made sitting down tricky. While we were having COVID lockdowns and restrictions, this guy was having cake, wine, cheese, and calling it a work do. And if that's his idea of work, you can kind of see why the country was in the state it was. So he got hauled in front of a committee. We do love our committees. Johnson, during his life, has had no problem throwing other people under the bus to save his own rancid skin, and has stated that he only attended these parties as his advisors told him it was okay. But on this occasion, the advisors fought back, pointing out they never said any such thing. Basically, it's a glorious nest of vipers turning in on each other. And on the very day this was going on, Rishi Sunak, 4 months after promising to release his tax returns, chose this day to do it. I mean, coincidence or what?
Oh, I bet those tax returns are full of some delightful information. We'll have to be on the lookout for any hush money payments to porn stars. So let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about our current president who has declined his invite to King Charles's coronation. Over here, we have had our hands full with other things. But I'm wondering if that maybe caused a bit of a stir in the UK?
Not really, apart from a few right-wing nutjobs calling it a snub. I do think it's a bit of a shame for him, though, as on that particular day, there's probably going to be more Americans in London than in the US. But as retaliation, we're not letting you enter the Eurovision Song Contest this year, so take that.
Fair enough. We'd probably put forward Kid Rock or something. Now, are there any other high-profile people who are skipping the coronation?
Well, apparently they're having some trouble booking musical acts for the coronation party. I understand a lot of people have actually turned it down. Now, am I right? Trump has a January 6th choir made up of inmates who took part in the insurrection?
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's a bit of a shame that they'll be still behind bars, I imagine, as having a musical number sung to our king, put on by people who tried to overthrow your democracy, could actually be quite nostalgic.
Ah, yes, the good old days of the 1690s. Now, Matt, the conservative half of our government has been busy fighting witch hunts with other witch hunts. What's yours been up to?
Well, Andrea, there's been a lot of talk about ex-prime ministers and honorary peerages. Basically, when a prime minister leaves office, they can nominate people into the House of Lords, which pays about £300 a day for life, with added expenses you can claim. So it's nice work if you can get it. Sure. Boris Johnson has nominated a few people and recommended his dad for a knighthood. Nothing like keeping it in the family, is there? Also, Liz Truss, you remember her? Yeah, she held the office for 1.5 months. She's also putting 4 friends into the House of Lords. And it's not just about the money. These people will also play a role in deciding our laws. So, if you see a law saying all letters to be banned, you know Liz's friends have been hard at work.
Oh dear, I see a lot of caprese salads in your future if they don't get that lettuce thing sorted out, which are arguably better anyway since they involve slabs of cheese. Anything else going on over there?
Oh yes, actually. We've actually recently joined something called the CPTPP. Okay, bear with me here. It's quite a mouthful. The Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnerships. Now, I know what you're going to say, Andrea. Aren't you guys in the Atlantic? Well,
sure.
Details. This is actually part of a £10 trillion market we're signing up to, of which the share to the UK could be, drum roll please, £1.8 billion, possibly, in about 10 years, maybe. And if the market grows as we expect it to grow and all the other countries that say they're going to join actually join. Basically, the word you hear a lot around this agreement is potential. This agreement has potential. It may be on the other side of the world, but it does have potential. It's basically like buying a timeshare on the moon. Snap it up now for a good price and we can worry and work out the logistics like how the hell do we get there later.
You know, that sounds a lot like buying real estate in the metaverse. You know, everybody's like, just trust us. You're about to make 11 million bitcoins, which if we factor in the exchange rate and carry the 2, works out to about 11 cents. So good investment. Now, Matt, there's a bill here in Texas that calls for a Texit, which would mean Texas seceding from the rest of the U.S. As a Brexit survivor, do you think this is a good idea?
All right. Well, if my admittedly somewhat limited understanding of American history is anything to go by, did you guys try something like that before?
Yeah, we did try something like this. No one can quite remember how it turned out, though.
All right, well, let me go with a sporting analogy as best I can. If you're playing a team sport, ideally, you want to be able to play with as many people as possible. It's the same advice for orgies. See, going it alone can be tricky. So I suppose you just need to ask yourself, is Texas more golf and tennis or football and basketball?
So Texas's DNA is 85% football, which made being the French club president very tricky for me in high school. Now, if we do end up going through with this Texit business, what advice do you have for us from the perspective of someone who's been through Brexit and has learned a few things about intercontinental breakups?
As you Americans, or should that be Texans, would say, it's real simple. Whether you do it or whether you don't do it. Once it's done, never ever talk about it again. That's the British way. We don't handle confrontation particularly well, which is strange when you consider our history.
Yes, and your large collection of antiquities.
Yes, good point. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm afraid that's it for another week. A big thank you to my American friend and co-host, Andrea Bridges-Smith. And if you want to chuckle at what's going on in the US at the moment, and by the sounds of it, now is as good a time as any, let's be honest, you can catch her show, The Friday Phoenix, which is, spoiler alert, out every Friday at Phoenix News Network. And I'm Matt Johnston, and I have a show called The Interesting Times, which is taking a 2-week break at the moment, but you can still subscribe at The Interesting Times UK. Same time next week, Andrea?
Sounds excellent, Matt. Good to see you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Take care, all.